no matter how much people earn, no matter what their political systems are. Corruption is to be found everywhere.
At 7:42 a.m., the quiet corridors of a Florida sheriff's office erupted in chaos. Federal agents in black vests moved in silence, their boots striking the floor like a countdown. Within seconds, the door burst open, and Sheriff Daniel R. Calderon, once the face of law and order, was in handcuffs. Papers scattered across the floor, a clock kept ticking on the wall, and the badge that once stood for justice now hung uselessly at his side. What began as a routine operation would soon expose something far darker, a silent breach spreading inside the very system meant to protect the nation. And this was only the beginning. Stay with us, and don't forget to subscribe to Military Power for more in-depth reports on the real battles shaping America today. The investigation into Sheriff Daniel R. Calderon entered a critical phase when FBI agents began their search inside his office in northern Florida. According to the official report, teams recovered stacks of cash, sealed packets of fentanyl, and containers of crystal meth hidden behind framed certificates and within a locked filing cabinet. Each item was cataloged, photographed, and transferred to federal evidence storage, marking the beginning of a complex corruption case that reached beyond a single county. Financial records later revealed that Calderon had accepted more than $600,000 in illegal payments connected to two of Mexico's most powerful cartels, the Sinaloa and the CJNG. These payments were carefully structured and distributed over several years to avoid detection. Federal accountants confirmed that the deposits were split across multiple accounts under Calderon's name and those of close associates. The investigation also linked these funds to suspicious property purchases, including vehicles and rural lots registered through intermediaries. Agents studying internal communication logs noted irregularities that indicated deliberate obstruction of duty. Reports showed that patrol patterns in Calderon's district often changed minutes before federal inspections. Analysts concluded that these alterations were not random, but coordinated efforts to protect illicit activity. This pattern of manipulation suggested that public resources had been redirected for private gain. The search extended to the sheriff's personal devices, where encrypted messages and deleted financial notes provided further evidence of misconduct. Cyber specialists working under the Department of Homeland Security reconstructed parts of the correspondence, revealing the extent of Calderon's network. The operation was methodical, pointing to a sophisticated system that combined local authority with transnational funding. In the days following the raid, the Department of Justice released preliminary data showing a notable rise in organized crime infiltration within local law enforcement offices across southern states. Calderon's case was described as a major example of how criminal groups could gain influence by exploiting weak oversight and personal ambition. According to the same report, more than 20 officials in nearby counties were also under investigation for similar offenses. The inquiry also exposed vulnerabilities within administrative systems, where a lack of cross-agency communication allowed irregular behavior to continue unchecked. Analysts inside the FBI's Internal Affairs Division recommended a new model of digital monitoring to prevent similar abuses. They argued that technology alone could not guarantee integrity without consistent supervision and moral responsibility among leadership ranks. In Washington, congressional committees began reviewing the broader implications of the Calderon case. Lawmakers debated the need for stronger financial tracking of local enforcement agencies and mandatory reporting of unexplained income. The incident reignited discussions about the role of federal oversight in maintaining trust between citizens and the justice system. Experts pointed out that when corruption enters the law itself, it creates a vacuum where criminal influence can grow without resistance. As the evidence accumulated, it became clear that the problem was not limited to one man or one department. The pattern of compromised officers reflected a national challenge that demanded unified response. The collapse of integrity within Calderon's jurisdiction showed how fragile the boundary between authority and exploitation could be when vigilance fades. By the end of the first week, the sheriff's office stood empty, sealed under federal order and guarded by plainclothes agents. The badge that once symbolized duty now served as a reminder of betrayal. When justice is traded for money, authority loses its meaning, and the public pays the price. As federal agents continued their investigation, attention shifted to Emily Calderon, the wife of the disgraced Florida sheriff. Official records described her as the owner of a small cleaning company, registered 3 years earlier in the town of Ocala. On paper, the business appeared legitimate. It listed a modest office address, a tax identification number, and a few periodic filings. Yet, when investigators examined the details, they found no employees, no service contracts, and no verified clients. Despite that, the company reported tens of thousands of dollars in transactions every month. The inconsistency raised immediate concern among financial analysts within the Justice Department. Further examination revealed that Emily's company had received multiple transfers from private accounts connected to businesses already under cartel investigation. The pattern of inflows and withdrawals suggested coordination rather than coincidence. Federal accountants noticed that the amounts moved through the account followed a repetitive cycle, with nearly identical sums entering and leaving within short time frames. The activity matched profiles typically associated with financial laundering operations that disguise illegal income as commercial revenue. Banking data obtained through court warrants revealed that the funds did not remain within the company for long. Transactions often passed through intermediary institutions before being dispersed to secondary accounts. Investigators highlighted that this method allowed the source of the money to appear distant from its original channel. Each transfer blurred the traceability of cartel revenue as it entered the American financial system. Analysts emphasized that such movement represented not only an economic threat, but also a challenge to federal oversight mechanisms designed to protect financial transparency. The investigation deepened when cross-agency cooperation began between the FBI's Financial Crimes Division and the Treasury Department's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. By combining datasets from multiple states, they discovered additional companies linked by overlapping addresses, shared phone numbers, and repeated contact names. These indicators confirmed that Emily Calderon's enterprise was part of a wider network of shell businesses operating under different registrations, but managed with a similar structure. The evidence demonstrated that what began as a local scandal had expanded into a coordinated system stretching across state borders. Federal prosecutors estimated that at least 7 related entities were functioning in parallel, collectively processing several $1 million over a period of 2 years. Most of the funds originated from regions in Texas, Arizona, and California, where cartel presence was already established. The discovery of this chain of operations illustrated how organized crime adapts to legal frameworks, transforming public trust into a cover for illicit movement. Forensic analysts also reviewed digital correspondence between the accounts, identifying automated payment schedules and synchronized withdrawals. This synchronization demonstrated a high level of planning, which required access to financial expertise and knowledge of regulatory loopholes. Officials noted that the transactions stayed just below the reporting thresholds set by federal banking rules, which limited immediate detection. Such precision suggested a deliberate attempt to exploit gaps within the oversight system. The results of this investigation prompted a response from Florida's Office of the Inspector General. The agency announced a new compliance review for all small businesses registered by law enforcement families in the state. Preliminary reports indicated that at least 4 other firms would face similar scrutiny. The aim was to prevent future misuse of business licenses as protective fronts for criminal finance. By the time federal investigators closed the initial audit, they had exposed a system that treated legality as camouflage. Each layer of documentation gave criminal funds the appearance of compliance, When money of illicit origin passes through legitimate banks and businesses, it does not disappear, it transforms. In the eyes of the market, it becomes ordinary currency, indistinguishable from lawful profit. This transformation is what allows corruption to thrive quietly inside the institutions meant to prevent it. In the weeks following the arrest of Sheriff Daniel R. Calderon, federal agencies launched one of the largest coordinated enforcement operations in Florida's recent history. The campaign was led jointly by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and the Department of Homeland Security. Its objective was to dismantle the criminal infrastructure that had grown around Calderon's influence and to uncover additional networks linked to cartel finance. Planning for the raids had begun months earlier under strict confidentiality, with multiple task forces operating across the state. The first series of actions took place in the city of Ocala, where agents stormed several locations registered as entertainment businesses. Among them was an internet cafe that, on the surface, offered simple gaming services. Inside, investigators discovered electronic gambling machines, hidden cash drawers, and accounting software programmed to conceal profits. Over 30 individuals were detained during the Ocala phase of the operation. Officials confirmed that the seized materials contained transaction data directly tied to the accounts used by Emily Calderon's cleaning company, creating a financial bridge between local operations and cartel networks. At the same time, another team advanced on targets in Lake County. Agents executed multiple warrants against warehouses and offices previously linked to Calderon's associates. Inside, they recovered approximately $280,000 in cash, as well as handwritten ledgers that documented dates, initials, and coded symbols. Forensic accountants analyzing these records concluded that the documents reflected a detailed system of internal payments designed to manage distribution proceeds. The presence of identical notation patterns across several sites confirmed that the operation was centralized and professionally coordinated. The third and most significant raid unfolded at a facility in the CMY industrial zone, where intelligence suggested that weapons and narcotics were being stored. When the tactical unit entered the building, they found 324 firearms, including rifles and pistols, along with an estimated 2.3 tons of illegal substances. The evidence occupied dozens of containers, and investigators noted the diversity of the arsenal, indicating a mix of domestic and imported weapons. Among the most disturbing findings was a handwritten list naming law enforcement officers under the categories safe, unsafe, and hours. The document implied that parts of the enforcement structure had been compromised and that criminal groups were maintaining internal surveillance of loyal contacts. The results of these combined operations exposed the magnitude of the problem. Federal analysts traced more than $42 million that had passed through shell corporations over a period of 3 years. These funds circulated through legitimate bank accounts, construction firms, and logistics services before being reintroduced into the economy. The sheer volume of financial movement demonstrated that the network operated with the efficiency of a mid-level corporation rather than an underground enterprise. Officials described the structure as a hybrid system that blended criminal funding with administrative legitimacy. Florida's Attorney General confirmed that 126 individuals were taken into custody statewide as a result of the raids. Among them were business owners, accountants, and 2 retired law enforcement officers accused of facilitating financial transactions. The arrests disrupted a system that had functioned quietly for years without drawing public attention. Many of the suspects faced charges including racketeering, conspiracy, and violations of federal narcotics statutes. Public response was immediate. Local news outlets reported long lines outside courthouses as residents sought information about pending cases and property seizures. In several towns, city officials held emergency meetings to review internal auditing processes. The uncovering of such widespread misconduct within a single state shocked citizens who had previously viewed their institutions as secure analysts argued that the raids represented a critical step in restoring accountability, but they also revealed how deeply organized crime had integrated into local governance. National security observers emphasized that this case was more than a financial scandal. It demonstrated how modern criminal organizations evolve by exploiting gaps in regulation and by embedding themselves within legal systems. The events in Florida highlighted a transformation of organized crime from violent confrontation to administrative infiltration. Law enforcement experts warned that this approach could allow criminal groups to influence policy, disrupt investigations, and weaken the credibility of democratic institutions. By the end of the operation, the combined agencies had not only dismantled Calderon's immediate network, but also uncovered a pattern that may extend far beyond Florida. The lessons drawn from this investigation became the foundation for new federal strategies aimed at tracking corruption within domestic institutions. The raids showed that when criminal enterprises adapt to the structures of law, they no longer challenge the system from the outside. They reshape it from within. Following the extensive operations in Florida, federal attention shifted toward the southern border, where investigators began to uncover a disturbing extension of the corruption network. The findings indicated that the infiltration did not stop within local departments, but had reached federal positions responsible for controlling one of the most sensitive frontiers in the nation. This discovery represented a major escalation in the threat to national security. At the El Paso port of entry, Customs and Border Protection Officer Manuel Perez Jr. was accused of allowing vehicles loaded with narcotics and undocumented migrants to pass through inspection lanes without review. Records showed that this activity continued for several months, often following a pattern that coincided with cartel transport schedules already under surveillance. Investigators noted that the vehicles cleared by Perez displayed identical concealment methods and originated from the same regions in northern Mexico, confirming coordination between internal and external actors. In California, 2 additional CBP officers, Jesse Garcia and Diego Bono, were implicated in a more technologically subtle form of collusion. Court documents revealed that both officers communicated with smugglers using coded emojis. The messages, sent via encrypted applications, served as real-time signals to indicate when crossing lanes were safe. A sun symbol instructed smugglers to proceed. A thumbs up confirmed clearance, and a car symbol marked the appropriate inspection zone. This communication system enabled the passage of over 1,100 pounds of narcotics across the border before authorities detected the breach. Analysts within the Department of Homeland Security later classified this method as one of the most creative yet dangerous examples of digital infiltration into enforcement procedures. The scope of corruption widened further when evidence linked additional officials to direct financial transactions. In one of the most severe cases, CBP officer Leonard Darnell George was convicted of accepting more than $400,000 in bribes in exchange for approving illegal crossings. Investigators determined that the payments were transferred through intermediaries and disguised as personal loans. The resulting conviction led to a federal prison sentence of 23 years, underscoring the seriousness of the offense. Despite the legal outcome, internal reviews warned that the underlying vulnerabilities persisted, as similar tactics could be replicated by other compromised officers. The investigation also reached the U.S. Border Patrol, where Agent Alexander Bennett Gindley was charged with transporting narcotics during active duty hours. Evidence showed that he used government vehicles and patrol routes to deliver contraband while maintaining the appearance of normal patrol operations. The revelation that an active agent could participate in such activity while wearing the official uniform prompted an internal overhaul of supervision protocols. Senior officials emphasized the importance of renewed ethical training and digital tracking for personnel operating near high-risk regions. By mid-year, the Department of Homeland Security compiled an assessment outlining the cumulative damage caused by these breaches. The report confirmed that cartel-linked corruption had become systemic along parts of the border, with cases identified in Texas, Arizona, and California. Financial analysis estimated that the total value of illegal goods that passed undetected during the investigated period exceeded $30 million. The findings revealed that criminal networks no longer relied solely on physical infiltration. Instead, they had developed an operational model based on influence, bribery, and selective cooperation with insiders. The pattern of corruption revealed a critical shift in the dynamics of border control. Instead of attempting to overpower federal defenses, organized crime had adapted by targeting individuals within the enforcement hierarchy. By compromising a few strategically positioned officers, they effectively created temporary corridors of impunity that bypassed security systems. Experts from national security think tanks observed that this strategy reflected a broader transformation in cartel operations, focusing less on violence and more on institutional manipulation. The events along the US-Mexico border confirmed a profound truth. Criminal organizations did not need to assault the wall. They only had to buy the gatekeepers. The danger was not in the number of weapons crossing the line, but in the number of trusted officials willing to look away. This realization forced federal policymakers to redefine the concept of defense, recognizing that the true frontier of national security lies within the institutions sworn to protect it. As the border investigations progressed, the Federal Bureau of Investigation compiled a nationwide assessment detailing how deeply organized crime had penetrated American institutions. The report showed that infiltration extended from small county departments to major international ports of entry, indicating that the problem was structural rather than isolated. This conclusion represented a turning point in the understanding of internal security, shifting the focus from individual misconduct to systemic vulnerability. According to federal data, investigators uncovered more than 19,000 forged identification documents and 800 falsified permits linked to ongoing cartel operations. In addition, financial tracking revealed that approximately $42 million had been laundered through fake corporations and falsified contracts in just 36 months. The scale of these findings demonstrated that criminal networks had developed mechanisms capable of bypassing traditional oversight and embedding themselves inside legitimate administrative systems. Officials within the Department of Justice warned that such levels of infiltration could not have been achieved without access to decision-making positions. Analysts concluded that the cartels had strategically invested in relationships that provided influence over routine procedures. By cultivating alliances within key offices, they managed to manipulate internal workflows without direct confrontation. The approach transformed corruption into a form of silent occupation, where control was exercised through money, compliance, and selective silence rather than open violence. Further analysis indicated that the infiltration pattern followed a pyramid structure. At the base were minor officials responsible for local paperwork and logistical clearance. In the middle were supervisors who approved authorizations and managed interdepartmental communication. At the top stood a small circle of decision-makers whose cooperation allowed entire operations to continue unnoticed. This hierarchy resembled the structure of legitimate institutions, which made the network difficult to detect. Each participant played a narrow role, ensuring that exposure of one layer would not collapse the rest. Federal counterintelligence units began auditing communication logs across multiple agencies to identify connections that had previously gone unmonitored. The investigation revealed cross-referenced contact lists between civilian contractors, private security firms, and law enforcement officers under review. The existence of these overlaps demonstrated how criminal groups had exploited the complexity of the American administrative system. They had learned that bureaucracy, when fragmented, could serve as both cover and protection. By the end of the review period, the FBI recommended new internal measures, including centralized verification systems and mandatory cross-agency data sharing. The agency also urged a cultural shift in how integrity was monitored, emphasizing prevention rather than reaction. The findings confirmed that modern cartels had evolved beyond traditional criminal behavior. They had become hybrid entities capable of merging with the structures designed to oppose them. This revelation marked a critical moment for U.S. security policy, showing that the defense of a nation depends as much on internal discipline as on external protection. The aftermath of the Calderon investigation left Florida and several border states facing a profound crisis of trust. Hospitals recorded a sharp increase in fentanyl-related deaths, while communities expressed growing skepticism toward law enforcement and the justice system. The revelations of corruption within local agencies shook public confidence in institutions once seen as unshakable. In response, the Department of Homeland Security and the Federal Bureau of Investigation launched new internal review programs to monitor financial activity and tighten operational oversight along the border. These measures were designed to restore accountability and prevent similar breaches in the future. On the political front, the case forced Washington to reconsider the meaning of national security. Analysts argued that defense could no longer be defined solely by external threats, but must also confront the danger emerging from within government systems. The cartels had demonstrated that influence and money could achieve what violence could not, undermining stability from the inside. The strategic lesson was clear. A nation does not collapse because of enemies outside its walls, but because those within stop defending it. The path forward depends on stronger internal vigilance, regional cooperation with partners in Mexico and the Caribbean, and a renewed commitment to public integrity. The story of Sheriff Calderon is more than a report on corruption. It is a reflection of how fragile integrity can be when power meets temptation. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to Military Power to stay informed about the real operations and investigations shaping our world today.